Thanks for joining us at the Business Growth Café, where each week we select from a menu of topics for a focused discussion with an industry expert to provide insights that can impact your business's growth. With your host, Angelo Ponzi.
I am Angelo Ponzi, your host here at the Business Growth Café, and thank you for joining us. Today at the cafe, I'm excited to have JJ Richa, CEO of Business Vision Advisory and serial entrepreneur here in the studio to discuss the road to growth and exit strategies for business owners. JJ, welcome.
Thank you very much, Angelo.
Before we get started, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your company?
Business Vision Advisory got started about 6 years ago, and it came about after I had started several companies as a serial entrepreneur. Mainly my background is in technology. During the downturn, 2009, I decided to start a private equity firm and restructured companies and did some mergers and acquisitions. And then after that, I thought, okay, maybe I could help other businesses that are, maybe between the $5 and $75 million in revenue, with helping them with their business growth and potentially fixing their operations, restructuring it, and helping them with their exit planning.
All right. Well, 2009 was probably not the best time to start a business. I actually tried to start one then, and it's one of my dead bodies along the road, as I like to say. I've had some successes, but probably more litter on the side of the road than I care to think about. Before we get started, I always ask this question of my guests. When it comes to growing your business, what keeps you up at night?
I think finding the right customer that fits who you're trying to serve, okay, and going after the right customer base. So I think it's always for any business, regardless if it's a service business like I'm doing, like you do as well. Mm-hmm. It's really finding that right customer and finding how to reach that customer.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because with what we do, we can run out of bandwidth very quickly. So it's really important that I think, for me anyway, to take on the right customer that believes in, for me, marketing, really wants to move and grow and all those wonderful things. So again, to your point, looking for the right customer base.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay. The other question I've now added into my question list is, what is the best business advice you ever received?
I think received and keep giving.
Okay, all right. So that was the second part of this. But okay. One in the same. One in the same.
So one in the same, and that is focus. So early in my career, when I first started my first company, it was like, what do I do? I'm concentrating on many different things at the same time, but at the end of the day, it's really about focus. The more niche, the better, actually. Instead of the less niche, the better. So I would say focus. And during my career as an advisor, I've given this same to others, saying that you have to focus on exactly what you do. You could have 20 different things, but you need to focus on potentially maybe the low-hanging fruit as the first thing, and then you can expand from there after figuring out exactly how to get revenue from that specific side of the business.
All right. So not trying to be all things to all people, to start really look at what is your best opportunity to get the business going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, because so many times as entrepreneurs we have these great ideas. We talked about this in the hallway. We tend to fall in love with them. I've fallen in love with a few of mine that even though I put the lipstick on them, they were still pigs, and they just didn't go anywhere. And so I think that's a great advice, that focusing on what is really important and where are your opportunities for success, and the other things will come.
Yeah, very true. And I can tell you, I spent a lot of time not only with mature companies, helping them with their operations, but I spent a lot of time with startup companies as well. And especially on the startup side, they just want to be the solution for everything. And you can't be. You have to focus, and you have to really really laser focus on exactly where is the pain in the market, and who could really use your solution in order to solve their pain.
Right, and I think that is absolutely the key, is understanding how your solution solves a pain for their clients, and understanding it's not necessarily the specific client you're selling the product to, but how do they utilize it for helping their clients grow, right?
Very true.
Yeah, as opposed to, hey, my product's great and wonderful, and I'm beating my chest here if you're not watching the video, and we forget that ultimately it's not about what we do, it's about how we help our customers.
Yeah, very true.
So I'm going to segue into this. You and a different show on Critical Mass for Business. Always happy to give my friend a plug. You mentioned you've had 10 businesses and you've had 3 successes. So tell me a little bit about your dead bodies, but also about your successes. And maybe pick one success, one not success. And for the entrepreneurs in the audience that are listening, you know, some advice that comes along with that.
So it's interesting. I'm going to go back to focus.
Okay.
So one of the companies that I started,
or lack thereof.
yeah, or lack thereof. So one of the companies that I started with someone who was very successful at starting another business and taking it to an exit. He and I started this business, and he wanted to be a solution. This was specifically around hospitality, software for the hospitality.
Okay.
And so my partner wanted to do basically every little thing under earth to solve the hospitality problems. And I wanted to focus on one product at a time. So what happened was this business, after investing between he and I and other investors about $30 million into it, we had to shut it down. So it's and it was really the lack of focus. So we ended up developing many products to solve many solutions, and never really marketed it properly and sold it properly. We were focusing on all of them instead of focusing on one at a time, and then taking one product at a time to the market.
Okay. You probably needed a fractional CMO to help you out.
I did. So I would have hired you then.
Well,
right?
now that we know each other, we can certainly do that. All right. So that's one that didn't go well. And while conceptually it sounds like you had a solid idea and concept and product, it's just that lack of focus. You were trying to do too much at the same time and didn't do anything, basically.
Yeah. On the other side, one of my biggest successes is when it comes to starting a company and actually growing a company, especially when it comes to sale, after you figure out exactly if there's a product that fits the market, if it's really solving the pain in the market, and you're actually solving it the right way, is really how you're going to sell it to the marketplace. So, and as an angel investor myself, I've been a member of Techless Angels for about 10, 11 years now. One of the things I look at is distribution or channels of distribution. So one of my biggest successes was the fact that I found the right channel of distribution for the company at the time. It was a software company for the restaurant industry.
Oh, okay.
And the channel of distribution was the resellers that sell point of sale systems. So they became our resellers, and that's how we grew from being, here in Orange County to being, to having a national and international presence as well.
Okay. So when you were doing that planning for this go around, did you do market research, or how did you, instead of rushing out there with your own software product, knocking on doors, trying to convince, I'll call it restaurant chains or whatever,
Right,
to buy this, that you came to the realization it made better sense to package it with a POS system and go into that channel?
Yeah, it came the hard way. That's the only way I can explain it.
Okay.
Initially, again, it was my second company starting, and I didn't know very much, but it took me about 3 years to figure out exactly the right way to do it. But then I learned a lot from there. But it is it was a very painful experience, not knowing exactly what to do, how to go after the right channel. But we were knocking on doors, and that's what we did for a long time. We knocked on doors for about 3 years.
A lot of persistence.
Yeah, and then it was proven that it's really not the right way to do it. And then the right way to do it was figuring out one day that it's really the integration with the point of sale system was the right thing to do, which opened the doors for their resellers to sell our product as well.
Okay. All of a sudden, you had a massive distribution channel
Influx.
that was already built for you. Yeah,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay, was that your favorite business of your
That's
three?
probably my favorite.
Your
Yes.
favorite.
Yeah.
Okay. And all three of yours, or all 10 of yours, however you want to look at it, were all based around technology of some type?
Technology of some type, software, e-commerce, web. Yes.
Okay. All right. So somewhere along the way, I think you said it was about 6 years ago, you started Business Vision Advisory,
Yeah.
which is very different than your other 10 companies.
That's right.
So why did you decide to flip it to a consulting service as opposed to jumping back into the?
So I found out that I'm kind of I learned a lot from starting these companies, operating them, growing them, taking them to the next level, especially the three that I had an exit. The others I learned a lot from. So you end up learning from the pitfalls as well. And it seemed like I could lend my experience and my knowledge to other businesses that are potentially that need such help. And it's been satisfying.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not sure if I've told you this story, and my listeners have heard it, but you're going to hear it again. My first business I started at 23, and my business failed at 23. So I made it about 8-9 months before the thing imploded. But that 8 or 9 months, I learned more about business than I ever did in school. And so from that, really propelled me, and my next business came along 7 years later, and that's the one I got to grow and eventually sell. So when we think about planning and really understanding, I think that's a huge aspect. There's a number I like to use that a lot of businesses will talk about. It's not the planning, it's the implementation is what really fails. So when it comes to planning, and sounds like with you and your consulting, you're really also not only involved in the operational side, but also about the planning side and looking long term. So talk a little bit about your belief in, I'll call it the annual plan, but I don't think it's annual anymore. I think it's an everyday plan.
It's a nonstop plan. Yeah. So part of what I do, you do a strategic plan. You have to look at what you're doing in the next 6 months, year, maybe 2 years and 3 years. And especially if someone is trying to potentially sell their business or maybe transition the business to someone in their family or maybe their employees, etc. So you have to have the right plan. And part of what I do, in addition to doing the right planning, call it strategic, call it whatever you want, there's got to be a plan. I think everyone has a plan. Most of them, they have it in their head, but they don't really write it down. But it's really the execution that comes along after that. And I think just based on my experience and rolling up my sleeves and working with these entrepreneurs and business owners, I see that most of the time that the plan that I put together, or maybe it was put by them before and they're trying to execute it, it doesn't really work all the time. So you have to pivot on a regular basis. You have to keep changing, recorrecting, and figuring out really what's the right thing to do in order to get to the next level. And as soon as you figure that out, that's when you go and say, okay, we know now what works. And now you put a real plan that kind of takes that to the next level.
Well, I think too that as we've talked with entrepreneurs, especially because they fall in love with it. I was doing some consulting work with this young entrepreneurial group out of UCI, where I'm an expert in resident.
Yeah.
And when they were describing their product and service, I immediately had questions. And so when I started to challenge them about how they validated it, their answer was, well, my aunt, my uncle, my father, my mother, my brother, and said they all love it. Well, yeah, and they were very resistant in really trying to go outside of where they thought they already validated. And unfortunately, what came to fruition, which I thought was going to happen, is that the thing died in about 6 to 8 months. And so I think that importance in that planning is to really step back for you entrepreneurs that are listening, is you've got to take it out of you, right? Get outside perspective, whether you're hiring people like us or whether you're using other counselors. But you just can't talk to friends and family because you're not necessarily going to get the real answers. So they don't want to.
That's true. They don't want to hurt you. That's right.
Yeah. So you mentioned exit planning, and so we're going to segue into that. So you get involved not only from the operational side, but also from the operations and helping to build valuations and really set up those exit strategies. A piece of research or an article that I read not too long ago, it talked about preparing for exit, and the article said, and I'll read it, said, on average, it take 1 to 5 years to prepare, 2 to 3 years if it's a third party, 3 to 5 years for family members, or 3 to 5 years for an ESOP. I don't know if those are right or wrong in your experience, but when someone really thinks about exit, it isn't like, hey, by the way, I woke up this morning, I think I want to get out of my company, right? So how do you counsel people that kind of the preparation and the time it takes to really plan for them to exit?
So most of the time they do get up in the morning
Okay.
and they say, "I want to sell.
I'm done.
I'm done." And most of the time, really, when they come to that decision, is because they've been doing it for a long time. They're tired. It's exhausting. Company's not running very well, and they just want to get out. And at other times, is because they think that their business is worth much more than they think it is,
Right.
and they want to sell it. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, most of the time the business is not worth as much as they think it is. Second is if they end up fixing it, they sometimes they may not get to a point and say, I want to sell it. Okay, it's fixed now. It's actually generating revenue. It's generating profits. And then maybe I don't want to sell it. But to answer your questions from as far as number of years, I would say you would need at least 1 to 3 years. Probably 1 is on the very low side. So, 3 years on average in order to plan for an exit. And that's not only to increase valuation, to make to restructure the company, but there's a lot of other things from could be estate planning, could be preparing your son or daughter to have the right knowledge of the business, and maybe educating them in order to run it properly. It could be finding the right person from your employees to actually take over.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things, and it can't happen. Definitely not less than 1 year.
Okay, not overnight. Do you find that companies that come to you are more for operations and always integrate this idea of exit, or?
I would say it's really all over the place. It comes down. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know, and I think the most successful business owners and entrepreneurs are the ones that finally find out exactly what they know or what they don't know, and get the right help. So sometimes what happens is, they bring me for operational or to help them restructure, fix
Mm-hmm.
their company, but then I need marketing help, and so I call on someone like you saying, hey, look, we need marketing, we need sales help, we need a CFO to help with the financing as well. So there are a lot of things that are involved, but I go in there with a fresh perspective, looking at really everything in the operation.
Well, that's really why companies hire us, because we bring a different perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're looking at from an operational standpoint, I mean, that could get into everything from supply chain to pricing to internal operations to capacity. You could do a great job and sell a whole bunch of stuff, and then you don't have the capacity to actually deliver. So you have to really immerse yourself into an organization. So let's talk about kind of a perspective, if you will, your perspective in giving advice to people that are looking for increasing their valuation. But if I was going to do a top 10 list or top 5 list of things they should look at, what would some of those be?
Well, first is the one thing, especially if they're trying to exit, right? From that perspective, first they need to find out if when they sell that company, is that money that's going to come in, is it going to be enough for them to retire, if that's what they're planning to do? So that's one thing. Second, are they trying to pass this down to their children or maybe to employees, and is that something important? What are they going to do afterwards? They have to plan. What are they going to do after selling that company? And I think that's part of again, those are non-operational stuff, but more of what's going to happen if they sell it. Are they trying to preserve, if it's a large enough company to sell, are they trying to preserve family wealth to pass along to their children, maybe grandchildren? That's something else. Well, are they looking at doing maybe some nonprofit, work where they're giving some money to nonprofit organizations to help with something they're passionate about. So there are a lot of things that the business owner needs to think about. What happens after the sale? Right. Most of the time, they just want to sell, and they don't think about what happens right after.
You only play so much golf.
Yeah, you can only play so much golf.
Okay, well, I think we're coming down to the last couple minutes here. So, last question for you before we sign off. There's a lot of things that drive business growth, and there's a lot of things that hinder it. So, as a business advisor, a business owner, in your observations and experiences, where do companies really typically fail and go wrong? And what's that advice? We'll combine it with the advice.
That's a really hard question because it could be all kinds of reasons why a business may fail. But I would say most of the time companies fail because they don't understand what their customers' needs are. So they have a product or a service, and they say, if I build it, it will sell. And most of the time, that's not really the case. Right. What happens is you have to really understand exactly what your customer needs, and then follow on. So most people, they just sell. It's a transaction. Instead of building a relationship with the customer, with their customer base, they just sell and move on. But they need to do a lot more than just selling and making sure that they just have the revenue. They need to make sure that the product is really serving their customer, it fits their need, and it's solving whatever solution they're trying to solve. Right. And so I guess understand your customer would be my advice. Okay. Understand your customer base, and mold your solution, service or product to fit exactly what they need, and make sure that you go back and understand that if it's really working for them or not.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I am a big proponent. Thing. I got tongue-tied there for a second about understanding your customer, because I think that either market research or whatever it happens to be, a lot of organizations just don't truly understand. I get, oh yeah, I know their job titles. Well, that's not really understanding your customer. So anyway, well, thank you for that. I think we're down to the last few seconds here. So JJ, thank you so much. Why don't we tell the listeners how they can contact you, your website, all that good stuff?
All right. You can reach me at businessvisionadvisory.com. Again, businessvisionadvisory.com. And you can reach me by phone at 949-419-6924. I'd be happy to sit down with anyone and assess their business at no cost.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us at the cafe today. You can find out more about me, read my blogs, or view the show videos at theponzigroup.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're a business in need of a CMO and you're not ready for a full-time person yet, please give me a call. I'm happy to explore that opportunity with you and have a conversation about fractional CMOs. And please subscribe to the show at the Business Growth Café, or we are now on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Spreaker, and coming soon to many other platforms around the world. Join me next week for lunch at the Business Growth Café.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion at the Business Growth Café with your host, Angelo Ponzi. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast and visit our website at www.businessgrowthcafe.com. Read Angelo Ponzi's blogs at www.theponzigroup.com.